Welcome to the Tabletop SportCast. I'm your host, James Cast. Today is September 7th, 2025, and this is episode 221. Today we'll be going over an update on the game creation that I've been doing on the side, away from podcast, away from my tabletop gaming. Just bring you up to speed on some of the games that I've been working on, and really what's the intent of it and what can we plan on seeing in the future. As always, if you'd like to help support the podcast, do so by giving it a like, giving it a rating anywhere you're listening to podcasts. All that really helps to kind of spread the word on the podcast, as does sharing it with your friends. I'll let your friends and people in the community know about the podcast. I've seen a lot of growth. We'll probably go over that in a couple weeks when we do our quarterly wrap up, but just appreciate everybody who's out there supporting the podcast. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can do so sending me an email at tabletopsportcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts on past episodes, ideas for future episodes, or just talk about your latest project. I've had a lot of people reaching out since last week's episode, which was episode 220. It was the 4th anniversary show. We actually were able to get that posted from an audio standpoint, had a lot of fun during the live event, got a chance to talk to a lot of folks, and a few of those we'll probably have on as future guests as well, as we try to bring back some of our content creators. You'll probably be hearing from a few of those folks over the next couple months. So looking forward to having a few of those guests back, but really, got to meet a few people that hadn't really had a chance to talk to before. So appreciate everybody who was able to take some time out and join me that night. As always, you can look on Facebook. Facebook.com/Tabletop SportCast is a great place to keep up with everything that's happening on my tabletop. And I'll also, from time to time, share like a weekly highlight. And today we'll do that. My weekly highlight, actually last Sunday, I got a chance to wrap up. As we wrapped up August, I also wrapped up my 1980 mini PGA project where I was completing the 4 Grand Slam events, the 4 majors from that golf season. And the final event was the PGA Championship at Oak Hill. Jack Nicklaus went into the final event with about a 3 or 4 stroke lead. I forget how much it was. He shot an even par, but was able to hold off all challengers and ended up getting that championship at the PGA. Overall, I had 4 really great winners. I had Seve Ballesteros win the Masters. I had Tom Watson win both the U.S. Open and the Open Championship. And then Jack Nicklaus finished it off with the win at the PGA. So really fun event. I will probably have some more information about how that project went really soon. All right, without any further ado, let's kind of take a look now and talk a little bit about what's happening with my game creation. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to walk you through a few of where I am from a design standpoint with a few of these games. And a lot of these games have not really gotten to a point where they're play testable. They're really still going through I'm still working on designing these games, but wanted to give you an idea about some of the things that I'm working on. But let's start with kind of why I'm doing this. And I think there's a few reasons why. One is that it's a challenge for me, right? It's something that I wanted to learn how to do a little bit more effectively. I've had a chance now to play a lot of different games, hear from designers as they're kind of going through the design process, taking part a little bit in some play testing here and there, and learning from those designers as they're going through the creation process. And that's been really helpful as well. And as I was doing that and playing games from some really great designers, it just became something that I was like, I wonder how I would do at this. So it has become, first and foremost, a way to challenge myself intellectually and try to see what I can do here in terms of my own game creation. And then, like everybody else, I've got my ideas. I've got some ideas on things that I would like to see done in terms of games that could be created. And while I could lean on other designers and just ask them to continue to work on these, I don't think these are going to be games that are going to be high on their list. So what's the alternative? The alternative is I just get out there and I create my own games and create games that I would enjoy playing. And you've heard me say it early and often, but I think that most of the really good game designers start first and foremost with, what do I want to play? And if they can answer that question and can come up with something that they enjoy playing, there's probably an audience for that as well. So that's really the intent behind what I'm trying to do. But I will also add to that at the same time, I've got a full-time job. I've got a family. I'm doing this podcast, and I still really enjoy playing games as well. So how much time am I putting into the game creation? Not really a lot. There's times where I tried this year to start bucketing a little bit of time, like a day each week, to focus a little bit on game design. And I've done okay with that. I wouldn't say if there's anything that gives during my monthly planning, it's usually the game creation. So, there are times where I don't really complete it all the time. And I'll even kind of give you an idea of what that's looking like. And we'll do that by kind of going to my mapping here. But when I look at my plans, you'll see that over the last couple months, starting in, I wonder if it even starts in like June. I think June I was pretty good about it because I was trying to get through some stuff before Play.con, dealing with some allergies here today. So you can see in July, there was a couple of events that didn't get completed. And that also carried into August, had a number of events. These were YouTube shows. These were game creation, things that fell by the wayside. So as I kind of get into this month, that's what I'm looking to do is deal with the game design a little bit more. So here we are. We're trying to work through the game design. It's not the highest priority for me though. It's probably fourth on the priority list right now. At the same time, I still find it really interesting to kind of go through the process and really challenge myself to try to do these different games. So that's part one is I'm trying to challenge myself intellectually, taking on this idea of game creation. After Play.con, I really felt like I had one game that had been published already, and I'll probably start with that one in a little bit. I've had a second game that is really close. And I think after doing some play testing of it at Play.con, I felt like it was really close. We'll talk about that one as well. But after Play.con, I sat down and I started thinking to myself, like, okay, well, what are we really going to do? I know the struggles that a lot of these game designers go through when they decide to publish these games. And there is a demand that must be met at that point. How much of that do I want to sign up for? And, I've had a lot of good conversations with folks over the past couple of years through this podcast and understand the needs of, supporting a game company. Do you just put something out for free? And, say, okay, well, there's the thing I created and here you go. You can use it as you decide to. I'm not really investing a lot of time into that. Or do I have something marketable that I feel like I want to try to, turn a profit on? But at the same time, that then comes with demands of what you need to do. You need to actually run a game company. I think given my schedule, I'm not really ready to do that second piece of the puzzle just yet. So I think after Play.con, I kind of sat down and started thinking, what do I want to do here? So overall, I would say I don't really want to get to a place where I need to support this on a regular basis. And as a result of that, I'm probably going to kind of hold off a little bit on publishing some of these games until I really feel like they're ready and they can almost be in a self-sustaining mode. To me, self-sustaining probably means I'm either going to offer some of these as like PDF games or find a way to, if it's a good fit, publish it on something like a Game Crafter where I can put it out there and then somebody else is going to take the reins and deal with all of the shipping and creation and all that kind of stuff. These probably won't be games that I, at this time, are going to want to help support in a more substantial way. But at the same time, I think as I get them further along, I really need to get more play testing done on some of these. You'll probably see me bring some of these to different events. I still plan on attending a lot of events. I'll be going to this Trucking 76 launch next weekend coming up. And I will probably bring a couple of these with me just to kind of showcase them a little bit. And from there, we'll see. My goal is to start getting something out there so that people can at least get it, provide some feedback, and hopefully, start to enjoy playing these games as well. But at the same time, don't expect like there to be a lot of support for these games because I'm not really sure that I'm ready to do that on a full-time basis. But, maybe that is something that becomes an option down the road. So what we're going to do for the rest of this episode is I'm just going to kind of walk you through like where I am with a few of these games, and probably only spend a few minutes on each. I don't want to spend a lot of time kind of going through it, but I want to give you an idea about some of the things that I'm doing, and how they kind of fit with what's happening in the kind of marketplace right now. And we'll start with a game that actually did get published, but has seen some updates since publishing. And that is a game that is now called the Bannister Mile. Was originally called the Milers, had launched an updated version of it called the Milers 2.0. I think the mechanics haven't changed that much, but I've tried to work on a little bit more of the branding of it. So this was offered as a free game earlier this year in Sports Sim magazine. If you downloaded that game, the mechanics haven't changed a whole lot since then, but I have been working at least on updating just the way that the cards look. And we'll kind of take a look now at where we are with the game as I look for the file here. So let's pull this up. All right. So here we go. And this is the basic design. You can see that I'm still doing some work here on this. I'm probably not ready to really publish this one just yet, but what we've got is the basic concept of the Bannister Mile is you are Roger Bannister trying to break the 4-minute mile for the first time. As you do that, there's these challenge numbers that you have to beat. You'll get these cards randomly, and you'll have a challenge number. You have a 2d6 die roll, and you're going to try just to roll higher than your challenge number. So the 5s are the easiest ones, and they go all the way up to like a 10 for the hard ones. The text here just kind of describes what's happening in the game, like in the race, and tells you like what is happening to Banister at that point in the race. And there are some different components depending on if he's in the first couple laps, the third lap, or the final lap of the race. The green and the red numbers give you an indication as to whether or not you are going to see your time come down or your time go up. It's designed where if you were to run even across the board, which is really difficult to do, but if you were to run a completely even race, you'd run 15 seconds per 100 meters and finish exactly at a 4-minute mile. Through the testing of this game and through the design, I've tried to make it where you can win this game about 40% of the time. So not impossible, but it's a challenging game. And we played a number of these games at play.con, and I would say that's about the number we were coming up with. I think we had 3 winners out of like 8 tries. So 37.5, so right near that 40% mark. The only other rule in this was that if you rolled 7s with your 2d6 roll, it meant you were running an even pace regardless of whether you were higher or lower than the challenge number. As I went through some playtesting with this at play.con, I'm going to do a little bit more redesign here. I think the text overall isn't working as designed. I'm going to probably change the way the text works on each card and utilize the space a little bit more for some of these other numbers. And the other thing that I've worked on that I haven't incorporated that will be incorporated into the design is like the backing of these cards. So I really see this game being something that you can play off of like poker styled cards with 2 6-sided die and run the game. So this is going to be the updated card backing, and those are some of the things I'm working. So I'm working with this tool called Dextrose. I've also been working with ChatGPT, and this is probably a good time to talk a little bit about the use of AI. So where is AI helping me? I'm using it as a brainstorming tool, first and foremost. I find it really useful to go through. You can see I've got a lot of different conversations that I have going with ChatGPT. I have become someone who uses tools, whether it be at work or at home, on a regular basis. I would say there's not a day that goes by where I'm not engaging with an AI tool at this point. I use it for the podcast. I use it for my project designs. I use it for the game designs. It's really helpful for things like graphics. Like I think doing something like this would have been really difficult on my own. I would have had a struggle doing that. I've using a different tool called Dextrose to help me with card design. And this has a lot more to do with using a tool like Dextrose and being able to work with a card design tool than it does working with this one. I've been working with this through Dextrose, and that's been super helpful in terms of trying to figure out like what does it look like as I'm trying to make like good designs on the cards. The other thing that I use ChatGPT for is to work through design elements and have it kind of like give me some feedback as I mention different design elements. And there are times where it offers up some ideas that work for me, and I will incorporate those into the game design as well. And, it's falls right in line with, Pareto's law of 80. I think that 80% of what goes into the games is from my original ideas. 20% is probably coming from input from AI tools. So there have been some elements, and we'll probably see some of those as we go through these, where it's been super helpful. So that's the first game. This is the Bannister Mile. It's a game that I originally created years ago. There's an article about this in Sports and Magazine, and it's really the one that I think is out there, and probably one of the next ones that will actually get to like actually being a published game, probably offered through the Game Crafter. Because most of the game can be played through the cards. All right, that takes us to the second game that we're going to talk through, which is a newly branded game called Track the Pack. This is the game that was the Fury Stakes. So let's bring this one up now. Track the Pack is what I've decided to rebrand the Fury Stakes. When I originally designed the horse racing game, as you can see from the logo here, I was really trying to create a game in the style of play games like Play Now games, and come up with a horse racing game that worked using the Fury die. As I went through designing it in the design process, I still think this game is very much set up like a play games style, using things like the qualities for the horses. And because of that, I'm not sure how close I am to actually getting this into a published state. I'm struggling with the idea of how much of this is kind of stealing from ideas, but it is a game that I enjoy playing, and I'll probably be playing this one a little bit more often. So what I've done for each of these games, and we're not going to spend a lot of time going through these, but I have created these kind of white papers. I may make these available for folks to just kind of read through and get an idea about what I'm trying to do. But the white papers are really helping me kind of organize my thoughts and think about the design process that I'm trying to go through. I've recently been trying to get these updated using ChatGPT as I go through my conversations and saying, okay, let's update the white paper. So a lot of what you're seeing here is kind of that summary. I also have my own versions that I create before I even get to using ChatGPT, and I kind of try to walk through like, what am I trying to do from a design standpoint first and foremost? I have played this at events for the last couple of years now. I would say going back almost 2 or 3 years, I've played this at play.con. I've also played this at some of the other events. So chances are that if you see me at a live event, this game will be in my possession, and I can walk you through a race of it. It still has some mechanics that I'm not that happy with, that I'm still trying to work through. But I am getting a better understanding of like how to create like some historical horses. Although I think overall, I don't know if I want this to necessarily be a historical simulation or not, but I think it'll work either way, like as a fictional environment or as something that you can run like historical horses through. Excuse me. So that's kind of where I'm at with this game. I would say the biggest struggle I've had over the past couple months with this game has been deciding what the branding was going to be of the game. And this really works for me. I really like if you've seen the game played, you'll know that what you're basically doing is going around the track and watching kind of an overhead view of the pack. And that's why Track the Pack really felt like it was the right name for this game. I call it the Grandstand Edition because in this version of the game that I'm working on right now, you're a spectator. You do not make a lot of decisions throughout the race. This is really like designed to be, at this point in time, a spectator race. I think there will be a future edition of this game where I'm going to work on what it would be like to run your own stable, like run your own farm, kind of train horses, bring them up to the point where they can compete as like 3-year-olds at the highest level. So that's probably what we're looking at towards the future. But at this point in time, still going through a lot of design pieces for this game. And I think the next big challenge for me is to decide, do I stick with things like the qualities, or do I replace those with a mechanic that feels a little bit more like something that I've created? So that's the next piece of the puzzle for me to try to solve here with this newly updated branding for the game, Track the Pack. All right. Let's see. We're going to go to our next game here, which is one that I'm really excited about. So let's talk about. So Calcio. What is Calcio? Well, Calcio is an old game played in Florence, Italy. If you watch the videos of this, and I highly recommend like going out and checking out on YouTube, like pull up the sport Calcio, and you'll find some really cool videos that show you what this game is like. And it really is like an ancient form of football or rugby, or just like, lots of different types of sports that are out there. The basic intent is you have two teams that are battling in an arena. Each end of the arena is a goal, a place where you can score. Each team is trying to score points, but to do so, you have to cross through a field of players who are looking to basically take you down, tackle you. And throughout the entire game, you've got players on both sides just battling with each other. And, it really is like a full out brawl. You'll see people punching, kicking, wrestling, like all kinds of things. Their intent is to get their opponent pinned on the ground. And if you do get pinned to the ground, you have to remain there for the entire game. So the way this game works is to simulate that. These player cards, very simple in design, allow you to understand like which die you use when you're brawling. If you are rated 10, you use a D10, a D8 for the 8s. If you are rated 6, you'll use a D6. So obviously your 10s, and every team has the same number of players at each rating. Your 10s are the ones that you want to try to get out there more often. But at the same time, each player in the game only has 3 points of health that they can lose. So as soon as they've lost their 3 points, they are out of the game. The other thing that's really interesting with Calcio when you watch the actual game is that it is played in such a way that they're really, for the first half of the game, there's almost no attempt to score. It's really about trying to eliminate players in the field to open up space, because it's really like designed to be like a 27 on 27 game. I use 20 on 20 for the actual tabletop game, but it still has that feel of like, there's a lot of players to manage, and I really should feel that way, because that's really what the real game is like. 27 on 27. You're waiting until it gets down to a manageable number, and then somebody can make a scoring. Well, in this game, it's a slow build up, and it builds over time. There's 2 components. It's a 15-minute game. It's a 15-round game, I should say. Each round represents 4 minutes of play. So you're going to play basically an hour's worth of time. To have a chance at a scoring run, you're going to roll a D12, and it has to be higher than the time remaining. So for the first 4 rounds, there's no chance of doing a scoring run. After that, you have to roll really high, and sometimes you don't see scoring runs until you get above like down to like the final 8 rounds. So really around halftime, which is what you want to see in terms of replicating the real game. At the same time, we're also slowly building up the number of battles that we have throughout the game. And it starts with 1 and works its way up to a grand total of, I think it's 8 is the most battles you can have at any one time during the game. So there's also this slow build up in terms of the number of people who are engaged in battles. And really, when I think about that too, like I think everybody is brawling throughout the entire game, but we're focusing on the key battles where people are actually losing health points. And that's really what's designed there too. So in the end, when we did a lot of play testing with this at play.com this year, we were getting some reasonable scores. We were getting games that were like 2-1 or 3-1 or 4. I think 4-2 is like the highest scoring game we had. So it does what it's intended to do. It's supposed to be a low scoring game that you can play fairly quickly, mostly designed as a head-to-head game. Not really designed to play solo at this point. I think this would really be designed to be a head-to-head game. And again, you're going to mostly use these player cards. You have some chips that you would have to utilize, as well as a lot of different dice, because you need D10s, D12s, D20s are used for the scoring rolls. I'll show those cards real quick. You get backs and goaltenders. You can see the goaltenders down here. Also, goaltenders are rated 15, 16, or 17. and backs are rated, you only have 2 of them. They're rated 2 or 3. The idea is that the back is going to roll a d20 when they make a scoring run, and they add their modifier, and they have to beat the goaltender. So if I have a +3 on my back and I need to beat a 15 goaltender, that means my roll has to be a, let's see, a 13 or higher. So 13 plus 3 would be 16. That would be higher than a 15. So that's what I would need to be able to beat that goaltender. So, this guy would have about a 35% chance at scoring against the lowest of the goaltenders. He loses a little bit more if he tries to go against these guys. There are some other modifiers. I'm not going to go into all the details. The one big design change that's coming to this game is these brawlers that I originally had when we were doing playtesting would use a D4, and no one should be surprised, but we found that the 4s are cumbersome. It's not fun to use a D4. So these guys are going to become blockers instead of brawlers, and they're going to be utilized mostly just to help you during your scoring runs. And both teams will have them, and there's a left, center, and right way that you go, so you have to decide where they're going to be on the field. There's a little bit of a hidden element to this, too, because you don't necessarily know where everybody has players deployed, because you only introduce cards, you flip them over as they get introduced into the brawls or a scoring run. So there's a little bit of a hidden element that when you're playing head-to-head, you don't know exactly what he has on the table. This game, I think, is very close. I am hoping in the next couple of months to have this published. I think where I'm going to start with this is Tabletop Simulator. This and the Bannister Mile both play really well to being published in Tabletop Simulator because there's not a lot of components that you need. So I'll probably start there just so people can start using this game and then figure out, again, I think like a Bannister Mile, this one is set up to be utilized through the Game Crafter, where we can get really nice quality cards and people can get access to them themselves. So probably something that will be available in the next couple months. That's really what I'm hoping. Hoping by, and I'll even say by the holiday sale, I'm hoping that this will be available for people to be able to purchase. All right, now let's get to a couple of games that are really early on in the design phase, and we're going to start with this game, which is Endure. What I've been doing here is I really have had this idea of creating a adventure racing game based on the eco challenges. This is really what I've been designing this after. If you are interested, there's a really good series on Amazon about the eco challenge. It was hosted by Bear Grylls, and it's grueling. You have a team of 4 people, and you are attempting to get through an entire long expedition that takes hundreds of miles. You are biking, you are hiking or running, you are canoeing or rafting, doing rock climbing. There's all kinds of different element challenges that they have to go through. A lot of teams don't even get to the finish line. So the idea behind this game is, and the reason it's called Endure is because it's only the best of the teams that are going to survive. And there's also this running clock that will slowly eliminate teams at different points in the race. Again, I'll probably make these white papers available. I just want to kind of give you a high-level overview. And the way that this game will work is that you basically have these 30 checkpoints that you have to go through. 30 stages during the race. They're cut across 5 different legs of the race, and each of the legs has a major camp that you have to reach. You usually have a time limit by when you have to reach that camp. So teams are trying to compete it mostly against themselves, you can see here that it's checkpoints 6, 12, 18, and 24 are the ones that will have cutoffs, with 30 being the finish line. Each day, teams will draw their challenge card or go to the next challenge card. They will do a die roll to see how they did on that challenge. Sometimes there's a special event roll. And then you will update how much time they accrued, because that is a lot of what you're trying to figure out, is how long did it take them to get through that challenge. We'll figure out when they get to the checkpoints. If they made it in time, great. If they didn't, they're out of the race. And then there's always health check rolls that have to take place. And then we apply any kind of fatigue or injury, which will impact the team's ability to compete in the different challenges. So what I'm working on here is the idea that there'll be 20 teams that you get with this game. They will be mostly fictional, but I am going to try to base it a little bit on what I've been watching through the eco challenges. There are certain teams like Team New Zealand, which I think symbolizes the top team, right? They have always competed well. This one team from New Zealand. They're usually co-ed teams as well, but the team of 4 is, you can see that they're rated for speed. We'll see in a second like what that means. Rated for speed. And then they have different traits that these will help them as they go through the race too. And then usually they will have some kind of special ability. So kind of beginning with this is like my team card design, but this is like early prototyping at this point. And then the other thing would be like these challenge cards. So this would be like a biking segment. And you can see here that depending on the team's speed rating, it tells you like how much you would have to spend doing this. So this is where a team like New Zealand, which is rated A, is only going to take like 8 hours normally to complete this challenge. They'll have opportunities to be a little bit faster or a little bit slower. But chances are a team like rated as an A speed is not going to do as poorly as a D team. A D team is never going to be able to do as well as like an A team. They're going to be somewhere in between that. And then there'll be these special event roles. This will probably look a little bit different, but there will be events that trigger different things. I'm also now starting to work on like the weather component, which I think would be the next piece. You can see some of these future models that I have in here, working on the weather system. I don't know how much night racing is going to come into play, but there will be some penalties for not resting and continuing to race throughout the night. There will be different terrain modifiers because you really want to work at like on the water, on the land at like, sea level, we'll say, or, normal levels. There'll be like higher level terrains like in the mountains. And then I have to also work on like, to me, like health and morale are going to be the two biggest components here. And I do want this one to be something that you can play solo. So I've got to work on like, what does kind of that AI manager mode kind of look like? So that is Endure, the adventure racing game. This is a game I've been working on for a couple of years in terms of thinking like, how could I execute on it? Probably will mostly use similar die. Like I think I'm going to use mostly D6. Like you have 4 D6 that you're going to utilize to represent each of the members of your team. And that will help influence like how much time it takes you to complete each of the segments or stages. And then there'll be things like D20s and D12s utilized to help determine like special events or like weather impacts. So that's Endure, the expedition racing game. I'm hoping when I go to Iowa, I'm hoping to have at least something that I can. My goal for this week is to finish something that I at least can do some play testing on this. I want to be able to try this game out a little bit when I'm in, and I think that's where I'm going to be now, is trying to really see if these mechanics that I'm designing are actually working. That's the next stage for this, is I think I'm ready to start testing some of the game mechanics. All right. And one more primary game that is in the design, and that is called Foils. I have, as soon as I picked up like an old version of Regatta, which is, a sailing game, an instant thought was that it's an okay game. It needs a lot of updating. And I've got this idea of like taking like what Regatta does and updating it to a more modern game. Like I think it needs a lot of updates to be what we consider like a good tabletop game at this point in time. The other thing that's really missing from a game like Regatta, the old Sports Illustrated game, is that there's no like team components. It's really about you versus your opponent. It's really designed to be like a head-to-head game. You can have multiple people, but how do each of you utilize your strategy? It really is to test you and your strategy during a race. But I think most of us would like to see some team abilities brought in as well. So as I started looking like what would it require to actually make like an updated like yacht racing game, I realized that yacht racing has gone through a major technological advance to the point where they now race in these boats that don't even sit on the water anymore. They race on foils. If you have never seen like foil yacht racing, you should totally check this out on YouTube as well. It is amazing, the technological advances that have been made in yacht racing. I can remember watching like America's Cup races in the 80s and looking at these boats now, you don't even recognize it as the same sport. So in addition to trying to bring some of the early elements of Regatta into a more modern game, I'm also working on how to incorporate this and make this a speed-based game, because really yacht racing it used to be hours and hours of racing, and now it's down to like maybe 20 to 30 minutes to complete a race. So that's going to be the main goal here. This one is a little further behind even like Endure in terms of like where I am, but I had this basic game engine from Regatta that I think I'm going to continue to utilize. And things like wind shifts and the idea that in each turn you're rolling for how much movement each group can make, that's going to stay core to the game. The idea of what I use in Track the Pack about keeping an eye on the boats, and it's going to be designed as more of a head-to-head game, so 2 boats is all you're going to have in the race. What would that look like if you had kind of that overhead view? So instead of doing like this whole like hex movement throughout this entire large board, I really want it to basically be where you can see the positioning of 2 boats in relation to each other so that you can figure out like tactically what are they going to do on the next turn, who's ahead, who gets to make the first tack, things like that. So that's really what I'm going for in this game. I don't think I've gotten too far in terms of design elements. Yeah, I've got like a team card so far of, this is the idea of like bringing in this idea of there needs to be the different crew members that have an impact on the race, that the boat itself, probably a little less here because I think they're really specific on the technical aspects of the boats, where the boats are very similar at this point in time. So there will be less about this and probably more about like how the team performs that will come into this, and then giving them some special ratings again. So, really still working on like what this looks like from a design standpoint. I don't think I'm very close yet to having this to playtesting. So this might be something that I'll continue to work on designing for the next couple months, and maybe get to a place where I get to actually having something that's playable by like early, Q1. 2 other games that I've kind of got in my idea flow that I've mentioned before, but one is I want to create one based on a high school track meet where you are trying to figure out like how do you deploy the different people on your team. I used to coach track and field at the high school level. I think when you get into a dual meet situation, you know who your top athletes are. You're trying to put them into events that you can score points in, and you have to consider like what is your opponent going to be strong in to figure out like what's the best place to put them in. Where are you willing to kind of give up points? So it's really about the design of your team, and then seeing how that design, like the implementing your lineup and then seeing what the results of that are. I'm trying to figure out how to do that though, because a track meet will have 17 events. So you want to make it where it's not really a boring game, and I don't want it to all be based on kind of the pre-meet lineup configuration. I think there has to be a little bit of drama that happens during the actual dual meet itself, because there usually is. So that's what I'm trying to figure out now, is just like, what would this game need to look like to be effective? And then the last one that I'm going to mention is one that ST Patrick and I have talked about a little bit on this episode, on this podcast, which is we're both trying to work, and we haven't worked on it that much at all because I think haven't really had a chance to kind of sit down and work together on it. Is we're trying to figure out how to make a fun gymnastics game, one that isn't just like an instant result table that you read on. And there is a lot of challenges to doing gymnastics because of the way the scoring has changed over the years. And we both realized that in this case, you would want to be able to recreate historical athletes, and you want to be able to see that like a Nadia Comaneci could compete against a Mary Lou Retton, who could compete against a Simone Biles. And how do you do that effectively given how different the sport has been over those different decades? So we're still working through that. We know we can come up with a score generator, but is it fun is the next piece. And I think that that's always the challenge, and where I give so many of the game designers credit is bringing fun into a game and not just recreating statistics. So, I think by going through these processes, I've gained a deeper appreciation for what they can bring to the table as well. All right. So quick summary. Yes, I think I've got a couple of games, one that's kind of out there right now that needs a little bit of a redesign, one that is very close to being out there, a couple that I am really hopeful for, and I think will have great marketability, and that's the adventure racing game and the horse racing game and even the sailing game. I think are 3 that really fill niches within our community, would be really fun to play. At least I think they will be fun to play. I know the horse racing game is fun to play, and those will be available at some point in the future. And I just really have to decide, like, how do I want to release those? Do I just release them as like PDF games, or do I go the extra mile and try to figure out how to actually publish those games in a meaningful way? And then a couple of games that you heard that are deeper into the design space, and I'm still trying to figure out how to make them even work from a mechanic standpoint. So yeah, I've got a lot, and none of this touches on really the four major sports. And at this point in time, I don't think I plan on focusing on those four major sports, or even the four behind that. Like, I can't imagine going after anything that's really out there at this point in time. As you can tell by most of what I'm trying to do, it's fill some niches that don't really exist. The closest I've come to really touching on something that exists is horse racing. And as I've told everyone, like, I think I'm trying to bring something different to the table with horse racing than what's out there. And that is to get away from the number crunching, get away from the kind of movement around the entire track, and give you more of a visual that feels like that kind of broadcast version of a horse race. So that's where we are. All right. So next week, we're going to stick with this idea. We're going to take a little bit of a break from non-sports games. I don't think this was really that. Most of what I'm doing, as you can see, is creating sports themed games. Next week, we're going to talk non-sports games. It'll probably be posted early next week, like Monday or Tuesday, because I will be going to this Trucking 76 event at the Iowa 80 truck stop. And I think as a result of that, like, I plan on spending a little bit of time with some non-sport games, plus not a large portion, but part of what I do every day, when I'm playing games on my tabletop, they're not always sports games. And I felt like maybe one episode to talk about some of the non-sports games would be a good approach. So we're going to do that next week. But until then, thanks for listening.